This game is another example of Harry Pillsbury's great attacking skills. First, he prevented his opponent's counterplay, then centralized his knight, and finally sacrificed a piece to destroy his opponent's kingside, start a deadly attack, and deliver the final blow. And it took Pillsbury just 21 moves to do all this. He started with d4 and his opponent Winawer played the Slav defense. e6, knight c3, c6. e3, knight f6, knight f3, knight d7, bishop d3. In this position black could play the Miran variation after d takes c, so black is waiting for white to develop the bishop, and only after that d takes c follows, so that the bishop makes the second move, and followed by another tempo move, b5, and that would lead to the very sharp game. However, black made a quieter move, simply developing the bishop, which is also perfectly playable. Pillsbury castles kingside, black also castles, and Pillsbury starts the active play in the center, e4, also opening the bishop's diagonal. d takes e, knight takes, bishop takes, and in this position black made a move which at first sight looks like a natural move. Knight f6. Indeed, the knight is more actively placed on f6 than on d7. It is defending the kingside, and also the move comes with tempo, attacking the very important bishop. However, it turns out that knight f6 is a serious mistake, because black's position is very passive, black pieces are cramped, and the only way to get some active play would be by making the liberating pawn moves, either by e5 or c5, in both cases attacking white's strong center, and in both cases the knight was needed on d7, because from d7 the knight would support both of these possible moves. But after knight f6, both e5 and c5 becomes problematic, and that means black will remain passive. Bishop c2, of course Pillsbury wants to retain the very important bishop, as he's going to start a deadly attack. And besides that, white is threatening very unpleasant pin. After bishop g5, the only defender of the kingside, namely the knight, will be pinned, and that would be followed by queen d3, creating a deadly queen and bishop battery, and immediately creating a threat. By capturing on f6, white would simply eliminate the defender of h7 and checkmate. That's why black played h6 to prevent bishop g5. Bishop e3, rook e8, queen d3, creating the battery, and queen c7, taking under control the e5 square, and, which is even more important, supporting the c-pawn. So black is threatening to play c5, which would be a liberating move. Black would attack, in this case, white's center and get some activity. However, Pillsbury didn't let black do it. He played c5 himself. At first sight, this move might look like a little bit anti-positional, because it seriously weakens the d5 square, and the knight might be ideally placed on this blockading central square. However, it's not the case. It doesn't matter. The weakening of d5 doesn't matter at all, because black pieces are very passive, and the only knight on d5 wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't create any threats. Besides that, the knight must remain on f6 to defend the kingside. And by playing c5, white prevented black from playing c5 and also pushed away the active dark squared bishop. So bishop must retreat, bishop f8. And now the knight is activated. Pillsbury makes his favorite move, knight e5, also blocking the e-pawn, and the knight on e5 is greatly placed, exerting very strong pressure on black's kingside. However, it might look that this move is a little bit premature, even a blunder, because black can simply play bishop takes c5, which it's exactly what black did in this game. And it turns out that if white captures the bishop, then the knight will be unguarded and the queen can simply capture the knight. However, Pillsbury found a brilliant solution to this position. Of course, he didn't capture the bishop. Instead, he started his deadly attack and completely destroyed black's kingside. Bishop takes h6, the bishop sacrifice. It turns out that black cannot accept it, because after g takes h, simply queen g3 check, creating a very unpleasant x-ray, and no matter where the king moves, it has only two squares, and it doesn't matter where it moves, the same reply would follow. Knight g6 check, and with discovered attack on the queen, and black is losing the queen. That's why black played bishop takes d4. Pillsbury captured the bishop, and only now g takes h in order to return the piece. However, now black's kingside is completely destroyed. Black has many weaknesses on the kingside, the pawn on h6, the knight on f6 are unguarded, and the g file is open. Queen f4, another strong move, attacking both the knight and the pawn, and again creating the x-ray. And it turns out that the only move which would defend the both weaknesses, namely king g7, is losing on the spot for the same tactics. Queen g3 check, and no matter where the king moves, again knight g6 check, and the queen is lost. That's why there is no way to defend both of these weaknesses, and black played knight d5, leaving the pawn unguarded, but attacking the queen, and the queen is the only defender of the knight. However, Pillsbury leaves the knight unguarded and captures on h6, and it turns out that black cannot capture the knight because of the standard checkmate. Bishop h7 check, and checkmate in a few moves would follow. That's why after queen takes h6, black played f6 to push away this intolerable knight, and also open the queen's way to the kingside, so that the queen joins the defense of the kingside. So what to do now? The knight is under attack. Shall it retreat, or there is something more interesting? You can pause the video and try to find Pillsbury's next move. So, the knight is greatly placed on e5. It is exerting very strong pressure on the kingside and is a very active participant of the attack, and it is blocking the e-pawn, so it must remain on e5. And Pillsbury makes a strong move, f4. And it turns out that the knight is untouchable, because after f takes e, the f file opens with great effect. It would be followed by queen g6 check. If the king moves to h8, then the rook falls with check, and after king f8, the king stands on the f file, and that would be simply catastrophic. After f takes e check, king moves, and there are lots of ways white can win. The simplest one would be rook f7 check, and black is losing the queen. Or if queen g7 instead of capturing the knight, then simply queen h5. Of course, white is avoiding the exchange of the queens, as the attacking side must avoid the exchanges with tempo, attacking the rook, and that would be followed by rook f3, rook g3, and that would be simply catastrophic for black. That's why after f4, black played rook e7. So now the rook joins the defense of the 7th rank. However, it doesn't help. Knight g6, attacking the rook, and it turns out that the rook is trapped. So of course, besides attacking the rook, this move also creates deadly threats, which is even more important. And the rook is trapped. The rook simply doesn't have any squares. If rook d7, then checkmate in 2 moves. If rook f7, checkmate in 1 move. If rook h7, then checkmate comes from f8 this time. And the last retreating square, e8, then checkmate in 2 moves again this way. And this isn't the most important, of course. Probably white wasn't even going to capture the rook to win the exchange. White has a deadly threat. The rook, with great effect, will join the attack, and there is no defense at all. That's why, after knight g6, black resigned. Hit the like button, as it's really helpful for the channel growth, and subscribe. See you in next videos.